So welcome back to the final day of NACCE. This was a record-breaking year for us, highest attendance ever. Greatest number of asks. Did everyone make an ask of someone? Yeah, raise your hand, thank you. Steady stream of tweets. Thank you, Andy Gold. Thank you, Beth Curley. I'm giving you a shout out from the stage. There we go, my tweeters. And innumerable meaningful collisions. I'm excited to host this next panel. This is where I'm going to ask all of us to push ourselves as colleges and advance an entrepreneurial agenda. Entrepreneurial thinking and entrepreneurship should not be the hidden gem. It should not be the hidden gem on campus. It should be at the forefront of the work of the whole community colleges, not just the business department. Before I invite up to the stage my esteemed, well, actually I'm going to invite them up first. Pivot. So I'd like to invite up to the stage my panelists, Jason Jannati, co-founder and chief communication officer of greeNEWit, a community college graduate. Jason also enjoys speaking as a motivator for students and faculty at universities and community colleges. Hire him. Sheena, Lindahl, who we all know and love, co-founder and president of Empact. Most recently, Sheena was acknowledged by President Obama as for her work as a young leader in America. I know, right? Chris Allen, Waynesville soda jerk, also NACCE Student Award winner and maker of a great peach soda. Get it. Make them expand outside of North Carolina into Brooklyn, please. And then last but not least in our hearts, let's give a warm round for Thom Ruhe. Woo, 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 woo. Thom is now CEO of the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative, formerly of the Kaufman Foundation, and has over a decade of work experience in entrepreneurial education, economic development, and community building, and is disruptive. I feel a little bit bad that he's so far from me on the stage because I can't kick him. But he's gonna make things go. All right, so before we start, I just want to take a pulse in the room. And so this will require you to stand. Please stand if you teach entrepreneurship as a general ed requirement. Oh, come on, I know Pikes Peak does. Nice.
All right, Clint.
Is that Clinton Day? All right, Clinton, woo! Let's give a round up for him. All right, and then also, please stand if you teach entrepreneurship in your CTE classes. Nice, is that Saddle River? Whoa, nice, good, you're my, oh yeah. Fantastic. All right. So this discussion will be on the entrepreneurial mindset and how to bring that to every student across campus, and dare I say, every employee, us and you, at the community college. We here at NACCE that entrepreneurship is over there in the business department or over there in the small business center, and we know that that needs to change. I'm a big believer in bringing entrepreneurship into CTE's classes. Those are the folks that are automatically going to be entrepreneurs or work for a small business just based on the trade that they're doing. And I think in this new world of work and the gig economy, I also think entrepreneurial mindset classes are a new market, actually, for community colleges as mid-career professionals need to reinvent themselves. Sheena, you have run Extreme Entrepreneurship Tour across the nation in 500 events and reaching 100,000 students. Raise your hand if you've been to an Extreme Entrepreneur Tour. Rockstar, yep. What type of students have you been surprised to see on your tour? And who are you trying to get at the Extreme Entrepreneurship Tour?
So I don't think I've actually been surprised to see any type of student, but they've really run the gamut. So basically our goal with the tour is to spread the awareness of entrepreneurship and what entrepreneurship really is to students all across campus. So what we've been finding is that a lot of times students will kind of, see in the media the different stories of entrepreneurs, and they'll start to think, okay, wait, I'm not like Mark Zuckerberg. I don't have that Richard Branson kind of personality, so I guess, entrepreneurship's not for me. I'm not going to look into that resource. So basically, our goal is to find, the great resources that are already there in their community, get them to self-identify as entrepreneurs by showing so many different types of entrepreneurs, not just different industries, but also the different personalities of entrepreneurs, different backgrounds that they've come from, the different challenges that they've overcome, and show that it is a realistic and viable career option that they can follow themselves. And I think so much of that happens from the role modeling. So I don't think I've actually been surprised at any of the students, because they should all be coming, but I mean, there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of idea that maybe this is something I could do, but a lot of times it's just not seen as something that's realistic or something that they're cut out for. And that's what we're trying to change.
Excellent. Thom, in your new role as CEO of Eli, which is, the nation movement maker, I like that. You're going to say it's a global movement maker, but who built the Ice House? Who do you see as the non-traditional future business owner that you're teaching or trying to reach?
I think one of the things we've been advocating for, well, probably since NACCE Portland, was that everybody has that potential. I'm happy to say over the years I was at Kaufman, sometimes we would be baited into these discussions. Are entrepreneurs born or bred, and can you teach entrepreneurship, and all these red herrings that distracted from doing something actually very productive. And really instead focusing on what this notion of an entrepreneurial mindset is. What's that orientation? What does that do for people for life options? We are right now, I would look at all the data that's out there about student debt and non-graduation rates and the under or unemployment of graduates. I would say that almost all community college students are at-risk students. And one of the things we can do to empower them out of that risk is to give them something like an entrepreneurial mindset that will serve them either in pursuit of a new company or a new interest, or as a great employee at forward-thinking companies that are looking for this kind of mindset. The challenge that I see is that we're still trying to convince people of the value of a mindset. And that's just, I have to tell you, I'm not as diplomatic as Heather has been, and she's had to apologize for me in years past for some of the comments I've made. But it's like somebody asking me, do you love your children? And I say, of course I do, and then asking for proof. Prove that you love your wife, prove that you love your children, prove that an entrepreneurial mindset's a good thing. Thankfully for us, we're practicing what we preach. We're being entrepreneurial, and we've heard in the market we need proof. So I'm very happy to announce a new partnership with some good folks here from Eckerd College, the Leadership Dynamics Institute, who's helping us implement the entrepreneurial mindset profile. That's the last piece that I think we have for some of those who are still debating the merit of an entrepreneurial mindset. And with some data, we hope to prove that once and for all, this is something we should give everybody. It's a life skill because it's manifest in people up here on this stage that are changing their communities by embracing an entrepreneurial mindset. This is Exhibit A of pursuing that kind of an agenda. And what we need in this country are about 10,000 more.
Thom, who put together you with Jennifer Hall?
I'm sorry?
Who put that together, your business and the entrepreneurial profile business?
Oh, KM did. That's what we call it. That's what you call, I think, a meaningful collision?
Exactement. Yes. Yep.
Yes. On the record. KM.
I'm getting a portion of that, rev share. I want to get a little bit tactical here. We do know, Jason, that there's definitely entrepreneurial things going on in the business department, but we know we need access across the campus. You were an entrepreneur right out of community college, and talked eloquently last year about how that word didn't make sense to you. But now you run a multi-million-dollar company. High five. Yeah. No.
Thank you.
How old are you?
28.
Lord Jesus. Woo. Okay. As a former student, what are your ideas about how do you reach all students, not just those in business school? What are the actual tactics? Because I know folks here are actually struggling with that because they are in the business department and they really want to reach out to their compadres in the CTE department. Like, what are some tactics that they could take either as educators or even just to attract the CTE students?
Sure, that was when we had the call ahead of time just to kind of discuss this. I was really excited to see that question come up because like we talked about, you could have hit me in the head with an entrepreneurship stamp, and I wouldn't have known what it meant. What I knew was I wanted to be in control of my time, and I wanted to be in control of my income. But I didn't identify as an entrepreneur. I identified with myself as a real estate agent. And what happened was when I started kind of thinking about what it took to start that business and grow it from beyond just me being a sole proprietor and having a team, that's when I started realizing that maybe there's a little bit more to this than just being a salesperson. And that's when I started kind of becoming more open to the concept of what an entrepreneur is. And I think Howard Community College is the school that I went to in Maryland, and what they've done a really good job of over the past 10 years is they have created themselves or they've turned themselves into a magnet for mentors. And they have a great program where people who have been successful in the business community, industry specific, they kind of parse it out. But what they do is they use those as the value add. And then what they do is they say, hey, anybody that's ever had an interest in industry A, B, or C, we have somebody here that's going to help you not have to make all the same mistakes that they made as they had to learn it from scratch. And what I've seen is that a lot of the students that may have been a little bit shy or a little bit hesitant to commit to wanting to move in that direction, they're seeing that, well, maybe I can at least have a conversation with somebody who's been successful. And what happens is I think they demystify a lot of this stuff. Like Sheena said, a lot of times people think I have to have a business plan, I have to raise funding, and I have to sell my company. That's what entrepreneurship is. But what a lot of times I've seen the transformation that's occurred is that they look at these people who, they didn't have any, huge advantage. They were determined. They were excited about what they were doing, and they found a way to make it work. And I think it humanizes the process a bit for the students who are looking at it. So I think the major tactic I've seen successful is to kind of organize the community members who could be mentors for the students and connect them in a way that gives the students an opportunity to learn and not have to make all the mistakes that the mentors made themselves.
I like that. That's a really specific tactic, industry mentors. Chris, before I go on to you, I'm going to ask Sheena and Thom. I think when we talk about entrepreneurial mindset, it's without industry. But so what do you think about sort of incorporating industry into the entrepreneurial mindset, or where do you see a match potentially between sort of communicating entrepreneurial mindset, but then also focusing on industry? It's hard because there's so many industries. So I'd just like to hear your point of view.
Well, most of you, work very tightly with the big employers in your communities, right? So if you've done the surveys that we did at Kauffman, and we've actually just started commissioning at Eli, what we've noticed a change is not the complaints that you can't graduate people with knowledge. Knowledge is almost taken now as ubiquitous. What's missing is, what we're hearing is the deficit is initiative, self-directed action orientation, problem solving, critical thinking, team orientation. These happen to be the characteristics of very successful entrepreneurs, but they also are very valuable employees as well. And I would almost, throw it out there as a game. We could do it as a drinking game at the next NACCE. Show me an application where that wouldn't be a good fit, because I can't imagine it. Whether it's a fishing boat charter to working in a chemistry lab, that kind of mindset, that kind of thinking. I mean, look, Jason said it. You wanted to be in control of your income and your time, right? Imagine somebody taking that kind of an approach to the resources that they're responsible for within their corporate structure. You'd promote that person through the ranks. So that's where we see this need. It's really been the thing that's been driving us to move Ice House into Gen Ed. It started as this notion of, it's entrepreneurship education, and it'll find its way in wherever it can in the organizations. But we've looked at it and said, no. This is fluoride in the water. We need to get entrepreneurship education in the same context as reading, writing, arithmetic. It's fluoride in the water. It's for the 99%. The challenge with so much of the current curriculum that exists, it relies on self-selection, selection bias. Like, I opt in, I've already identified in some way. Everybody on this panel would have fallen in that category. But what happens for the 99% of the other people? And if we figure out a way to leverage that 99%, ladies and gentlemen, that's the greatest untapped natural resource we have on the planet. Because it's going to be entrepreneurs that are going to solve society's big challenges, big problems. And it's behooving upon us, it's our responsibility to give them that tool set, to give them that mindset.
I like the fluoride analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the self-identification is so key, but then the other piece, like Jason was saying, is having some place to start. And it's funny, like when I think back to when we started the Extreme Entrepreneurship Tour, it came just after college. You know, my partner, Michael Simmons, had started a web design company when he was 16 years old. I was paying my way through college at NYU, and we realized so many of the things that he was doing to be successful in his business were the same strategies that I was using to pay my way through college to make this big dream come true. And we came up with this concept of the iceberg. So at the top of the iceberg is that what I think, you know, most people maybe will think about when they think about entrepreneurship: the material things, the financial success, the, you know, all the successful business. But underneath that iceberg, there's so many different pieces that kind of make that tip of the iceberg actually come above the water. So I think it's 80% of an iceberg is below water. But you have your personal brand, your network, your growth, your skills, and your development. And you can start working on those things. Like if you're in industry, if you're in college, no matter where you are, you have some place where you can start applying these things. And if you go out and start a business, you're growing that iceberg. So even if the business fails, you've gained all of these other skills that can then apply to your career or apply to something else that you're doing. So it's sort of seen sometimes as a risky thing and so complicated. But the more I think we can simplify the process, instead of scaring people and saying, well, you have to think about this and this and this and this and this. Yes, you do. But it's also pretty logical, and you can simplify it a lot too. And I think when that's focused on, and those first steps can happen, that's when people start to get excited and think, hey, maybe I can do this, and start self-identifying too.
That's a good reminder, Sheena. I know that you put yourself through school. But and I think that's why I think there's such a great market in community colleges. I talk about this a lot, the hustle, right? Like you're just trying to get yourself through school, pay that bill, and that's that kind of initiative that I think we see so much of across the community college. Is that they're automatically entrepreneurial. Chris, you know, you're actually in school now, working with a great team. Thank you, Haywood. How would you answer those same questions? How do you reach students across the campus? What kind of messages do you have to give? How do you do that? Is it through pizza and beer? Like, what's your thoughts?
So I think that's a huge challenge. I think it's probably the biggest challenge maybe for all community colleges is to reach all the students, because that's one of the very individual things about community colleges is you're looking at such a wide and varied student body. I mean, we'll have classes with everyone from 16 to 60. From all kinds of demographics, all walks of life, all different backgrounds. So you just never know. I don't think there can be one answer. I don't think there can be one strategy. One thing that's very particular for our area, this is going to sound strange, is that we've been very blessed by poverty for a long time. So people in our area have, we've kind of had to make it our own for so long anyway. That's just what we do. We tap into the land, we tap into our resources, we tap into our skill set, we tap into our family, whatever's there. And that's the same thing for our business. We found what was there. For us, it's our agriculture, it's our local food movement. That's what we tap into. So, other places can't be so lucky with that. Other places don't have that same widespread entrepreneurial mindset that we're so lucky to have in Western North Carolina. So I think that's really, you've hit the nail on the head. That's a huge challenge. How do you reach these people? What avenues do you take? Do you go strong and push the envelope and get really behind social media and these nice innovative strategies and technology, and risk alienating your older crowd who's going to come back, maybe reevaluating their career and saying, a career path isn't for me. This thing that you're dangling in front of me called retirement, that's no longer an option. So that's really tough. I wish that I had a better answer, but honestly, I don't know. I don't envy administrators for that sole fact.
I was having an interesting conversation last night at the fire pit. I don't know if they're in the room, but we were talking about kind of ingenuity and how that's kind of at the foundation of a lot of what entrepreneurship is about. And has anybody seen the show Apprentice? The old, it was Donald Trump, who's older. I don't think it's. I know it kind of got weird with all the celebrity stuff towards the end. It got real weird, but. I don't remember the name of the episode, but there were the two teams, and they were in New York City, and their goal, he said, look, whoever makes the most money running this rickshaw business will win the challenge. And the one team that was very analytical, they said, okay, we're going to build the best system, the most efficient process for doing the most rickshaw rides anybody's ever seen. We're going to have the best rickshaw business ever. They were hustling. These guys were sweating. The guy slipped. He hurt his arm, and they were hustling. They were working as hard as humanly possible. And I think they ended up making like $5,000. That was what in one day they made $5,000 running this little rickshaw in New York City. And that was Team 1's plan. Team 2 said, they ran out the door. Team 1 ran right out of the door. Team 2 said, hold on a second. We're on The Apprentice. Don't you think people might pay for the ability to advertise on our rickshaw? So instead of going out and doing rickshaw rides, they called all the different real estate developers, all the different people in the New York area, and sold advertising space on the rickshaw. And they ended up doing like $250,000. So, but what's funny was the first team came into the room and they were like, there's no way you guys did more rides than us. We had the system down, and when they said the numbers, their jaws dropped. But I think it was that ability to think outside the box. And I know if you guys have a base of entrepreneurs in your programs that are showing promise or are showing motivation, task them. Say, look, we're going to split you into two teams. Whoever brings more potential students into this program wins a prize. Go. I think you might get some results you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and if I can, just to sort of tie that up, and I can't take credit for this, this is something that our entrepreneurship instructor and the leader of the program is always harping on. And I think this can apply for any program, but especially something if you're trying to get behind entrepreneurship and you're trying to push the entrepreneurial mindset. And she said a versatile program meets people where they are. So we came into the program in a very different situation than most. We had a business. We already had our business. We were trying to grow our business and learn our business. But that's not typical. It's I'm sure not the common way to go into a program such as ours. Most people want to go in and they might have an idea, or they might be like you. They might not even be self-identifying as an entrepreneur. They just know that entrepreneurship means that I can do something on my own. And a versatile program will meet them there and guide them through that path and say, here's what you should do, here's what you shouldn't do. And the program's worked very well for us to have our business and to guide us through and dive into each section of the business piece by piece and really, really dive into it.
KM, I want to jump in here. I hope everybody in the room is hearing Chris. Some of us get the opportunity to come up and bloviate about how important it is to do this. This is Exhibit A. This is what it can be done. And I think we should also be thankful that we have foundations like Coleman and Burton Morgan that recognize and showcase student accomplishments. Michael, thank you very much for that, because this is what you are working for. This is the product, right? If you don't want to believe the people that are up here as the talking heads, believe the potential and the output that's sitting right here in front of you. If we start this movement so that there's 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 more Chris's out there, we are going to move the needle, economically speaking, in this country. And we're going to redefine what we're squabbling over to things that are going to be a lot less meaningful than what we're arguing about now. This is the future. This is what you exist to do. Make more Chris's.
I would say absolutely. Thank you for that, Tom. I think it's an important note to make here. And I would say also make more Jasons, right? Because he's sort of come through the system and is giving back his time and very successful. I would also just say, just as a note that's in my head, to harken back to the entrepreneurial mindset, and Heather Van Sickle and Sarah Whiffen, and I know Dr. Saraswathi's not in the room, but what I heard you saying, Chris, is like, we were blessed with poverty and natural land. So you started with what we call, right, the bird in the hand, right? But we saw what we had. Jason, your story about the rickshaw was like, what are we starting with? I think yours was a good thing because we think we're starting with one thing. We're thinking, in the apprentice example, we think we're just starting with a vehicle, right? And how do you optimize the vehicle? But someone had the foresight to look like, no, really, we're starting with like a national brand, right? And so how do you I sort of challenge all of us, we all think we're starting with one thing, what's another way that we could turn the prism and see it in a different way, and that maybe we could monetize it, share it, partner with it, and collide it. And I also think, I would just say, also building on what Thom's saying, and this goes back to the new world of work that's being done out of Feather River. Big shout out to my friends Rajinder and Amy. It is, we are in a new world of work, and people need to reinvent themselves. So it's actually like global climate change, if you believe in that. Like, it is here, right? Like, we all need to be, like, we're a third of our economy is the gig economy, and that's forecasted to go to 50%. So we all have to be like Chris and Jason and Sheena. We have to be able to figure out how to innovate and use ourselves, be entrepreneurial ourselves. To, if it's a large company like NECCE that was on the panel yesterday, or creating our own venture.
I want to take one step further. We have to understand that, we've used words historically of ecosystem, but this is networking, this is community. Yep. Community is the new form of currency. I'm telling you that right now. And in the parts of the country that understand that and that are leveraging it, the entrepreneurs, the individuals, the students that have the entrepreneurial mindset, they're finding those connection points within their community, and they're leveraging the benefit. I said this as we launched the 1 Million Cups program at Kauffman. The benefit of leveraging your community is more valuable than in some cases than somebody giving you an investment of cash. That's why I'm calling it currency. Community is the new form of currency, because together we can accomplish more if we're all kind of on the same page, trying to encourage this in our community. And we have to be intentional about that.
And that's exactly why we're here. In the acceptance speech for the award yesterday, that's why Megan mentioned everyone in the community. Without our community, we wouldn't be here. This, as you call me, a product, it wouldn't be what it is. And that's the agricultural community, that's the community college community, that's the small business center community and the mentorship, that's the other local small business owners that we're tapping into. It's everyone, and you're absolutely right. Without the community and the community support that we have had in the last year and a half of business, there's no chance that we'd be here. Zero.
I think something I'd love to add to the concept of starting with what you have, and I think actually generally I've seen community colleges being pretty good at this compared to the rest of the ecosystem. I think that it's important to remember that some of the best businesses are not the sexy businesses. And so often I think there's this competition within the ecosystem about we have to focus on the high growth. We have to focus on the folks that need the investment, and that's the way you're supposed to go. But I've seen so many young entrepreneurs get burned because they think they're supposed to take money. And they think that's the step. So somebody they'll raise the money, or they'll spend all of their time trying to raise money that they don't even need to get started if they were to think about it differently. Yeah. Or people who don't identify because it's not a cool enough business. There's an entrepreneur on our Impact 100 who does computer hardware recycling. And he's like, I'm not good enough to stand up here with all of the other entrepreneurs, because he didn't think his business was sexy enough. He was probably one of the most successful businesses in the room. So there's all these incredible, I think some of the most successful businesses flying under the radar, particularly in a lot of the communities that we all work in. And I think we have to make sure that we give them and their risk-taking and their approaches the same amount of glory and glamour as we give, the people developing apps and high-tech companies, because we need it all. We need it all, and we can't just dismiss this as not as important.
Absolutely. Yeah, Sheena, I think that's absolutely correct, and I think that often maybe even the less glamorous, the more important. And I'm going to again connect this back to our area. And while I'm excited to see that there's massive IT development, a lot of infrastructure development in our area, what really excites me is when I hear that our farmland is growing, that there are more young farmers in our area every year. That's what excites me. Because that's, if you want to talk about a vitally important industry, let's talk about food and where it comes from.
Right. Yeah. It's so funny that I think it's true. It's like how do farmers are entrepreneurs, and they're probably the most risk-taking entrepreneurs. They don't control the weather, right? And so I think it's sort of again the non-sexy businesses that's really entrepreneurial businesses. And I think it goes back again, maybe to your point, Jason, that maybe we should think about industry. I think, like sort of highlighting different industries, like non-traditional entrepreneurial industries, and how do we sort of get that across to people?
Yeah, and I think, just over the, we'll call it the learning curve, or the NACCE that I took, I think there was a few conceptual truths that I've kind of been able to hold on to, and then there's some tactical truths that I feel like are really important. The conceptual ones are, I think, the ones that can be the catalyst for the light to go off for a lot of the students. And the biggest one for me was I saw a motivational speaker, and I was saying this last night, I was in special ed reading and math for, I think, pretty much through middle school. And I'd always identified with being dumb and not being smart enough. And the speaker, what he said was, he said, the want is more important than the how. Most people get paralyzed by the how because they want it, but they don't know how, and therefore if they don't know how off the top, then, well, it's not realistic. But he said, if you want it bad enough, you'll figure it out. And when he said that, I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders because I knew I could want something bad enough. But I didn't know if I could figure out how, but that was okay at that point because I wanted it. And the other one that I always kind of go back to through my career now is that I believe it takes pressure to create diamonds. And when people can understand that it's not going to be a nice, fluffy, easy ride, it's not supposed to be, that I think people can take some safety in that, to know that if they're going through tough times, it's not that their idea is not going to work, or it's not that you're failing, it's that you're probably doing it the right way if you're getting hit over the head. You got to take those knocks. From a tactical side, I think it's very important to understand from a business model perspective whether your business model is transactional or it's residual. Sheena and I had a long conversation the other night about how a transactional model can be exhausting for a sales force. Whereas a residual model gives you a baseline to continue to grow. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. I have an opinion, but I'm not saying we should judge. But I think students should have a very firm understanding of that as they're starting their business, because it dictates what you need as far as staffing and what you need as far as abilities. And it was a lesson we had to learn the hard way.
It goes back to your rickshaw example, right?
Yeah.
The rides, the number of rides was transactional.
Yeah.
The advertising was residual.
And very limited.
Yeah. Thom, I want to take us a little bit, because you have a nice global perspective. I think you were at the Vatican either last year or the year before. Like, where do you see entrepreneurship as a mindset going globally, and any insights about where the U.S. compares in that spectrum?
Yeah, again, for those of you who were at last year's, I apologize. I don't even recall the first 24 hours at the conference, because I had red-eyed back from Rome, where I had the privilege to, I say, tongue firmly ensconced in cheek, preach the gospel of entrepreneurship. And as they were, I was there at the invitation of the Harambee Entrepreneurial Alliance, which is a group of very dedicated young African-American, I'm almost 50, so I can call them kids, that are really doing, just trying to revitalize the whole African continent. And so they were asking for my support, and I got to go in and talk about the importance of this entrepreneurial mindset. And I got to tell you, I'm not even Catholic, but I was just awestruck at the full weight of the Vatican, sitting and listening, and then concluding at the end of it, as the highest ranking member of the Pontifical Council of Justice and Peace reflected on what I said, and then commented, I wonder if it shouldn't be the position of the Vatican that an entrepreneurial mindset should be considered a basic human right. This is the way the rest of the world is looking at this. This is what got me invited to the United Nations General Assembly, and again, preach the gospel of an entrepreneurial mindset. It's a big reason why I climbed out of a beautiful ivory tower with a gilded, wonderful paycheck to join a startup. You got to practice what you preach, and if you're a believer, then believe and do. Inspire to action, because the rest of the world has figured this out, people. Icehouse is growing faster off our shores than on our shores. In 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to be down in Mexico signing a 5-year deal to educate 50,000 students. The secret is out, okay? So ask yourself this. You say, what's your ask? Here's my ask. My ask is this: don't let this year's NACCE be the year, like it was perhaps in years past, where you get inspired by this, you go home wanting to do this, you think you're going to, and then you just let the machine beat you down. Okay?
Say that again, Thom.
You cannot do that. There's too much at stake. This notion of what an entrepreneurial mindset can do and empower is taking off. A bad joke would be to say like Ebola, but it is taking off around the world. I had to be slightly obnoxious, or else I wouldn't have my reputation intact. This is taking off, and we need to remain the global thought leaders on that. For God's sakes, we birthed it. The French might have given us the word, but we gave it the meaning. And if we can't do it, I fear for where we're going. And if I had one place, I knew this for a fact in my bones in the 7 years I was at Kaufman, I'm still affirmed for it. The community colleges are the place to do it. You are at the nexus of the most important things happening in this country. But don't go home and fall victim to the machine. Let this be the NACCE that motivates you to finally do it. And if we can help, let me know.
I think that's right, and I think, and ask, right? Sarah Witham and Heather brought us effectuation. I think what I hear from the community is that it's great to always be at NACCE because there's so many like-minded peers, right? But then you go back and you're in the machine and maybe you're one voice or a departmental voice and against the hierarchy. It's like, but just remember that there are folks that are going through the same thing as you, and we here at NACCE are going to work to make sure to facilitate those conversations, sharing best practices, so that in 3 months we can all report back, our first steps. In 6 months, we can report back our progress, and then we can all be on the main stage next year, sort of saying, like, this is what I did, and these are the kinds of changes that I made through these connections and collisions and the effectuational process. I guess, I wanted to start, like, sort of as we get towards the end of our time together, really, when we started the conversation, I asked who was able to teach entrepreneurship at the gen ed level, and then who was teaching it in the CTE. I think I'm just going to sort of ask all my panelists, like, what are some tactical suggestions that you have for these folks out here who actually want to go back and do that now, inspired by Thom's words?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, even as an entrepreneur, you can have a great planning session, and all of a sudden you go from that planning session back to the office to the real world, and there's all these different factors that you can look at and say, oh, it kind of just starts degrading that motivation or that excitement. But I think that first, I think a lot of the students are turned off, or at least I know I was turned off when a lot of the times it was like you have to write a business plan and you have to know everything you're going to do before you've tested anything, before you've figured it out. And I knew that was a big turnoff for me. And I think that the biggest thing for the CTE students, I think there's a lot of potential there because I think they have a core value or a added benefit they're learning how to provide. And then you can kind of supplement that core skills with some of the business process, accounting, finance, all the things you need to run the business. But I think that truly asking yourself, I think that the quality of our answers are dictated by the quality of our questions. And the question being, what can I do to turn my program into a magnet for high-performing potential entrepreneurs? And if you consistently ask that question to yourself and to others, and you will create an energy that you will become that magnet. And then I think a lot of the students will actually play a role in helping you become a stronger magnet because the case studies will build, the past performance will be there, and then all of a sudden you go from kind of this, you were hoping you would be it, to now you are the authority in the space. And I think that giving yourselves that challenge is going to be the best thing you can do, especially coming back next year and seeing the progress.
I'm going to reframe the question a little bit, but I think you got it anyway, but I just want to be more specific in my ask, right? Be specific in your ask. So I'm going to ask, whoever wants to answer this question, So I like your part about the magnet. So we're all, we're going to go back across the country and we're going to say entrepreneurship in gen ed, entrepreneurship in CTE, and people are going to look at us like we're crazy, right? So what is your recommendation? Because I know all of us partner, whether it's you, Sheena, and Thom across the world with different partners, or you, Chris, partnering with your vendors and your customers. How would you suggest that the audience really create their ask? Like, how should they sort of think about that transaction where they sort of know we're not doing it now and there's a reason we're not doing it? So they're going into that conversation knowing that it's going to be a difficult ask. How would you help them formulate success in that ask?
Let me tell you just from experience what we've seen. I don't know how many in the room are work at their community college foundation or in development. Your job is to find the money, right? What we have found with just the Ice House program alone is that the message behind it, the deliverable behind it, what it means for the community and contributing to that notion that I said earlier, is a very attractive, for lack of a better term, product or package for philanthropists to fund. In the case of Lorain County Community College, which was one of our earliest partners on this, if Tracy Green were in the room, she would tell you that when they went forward to figure out how to afford and roll this package out, it made people, added people to her Rolodex that would never in a million years have contributed to the community college. Never. Because these are the types of philanthropists that don't need to see their name on a building, don't want to invest in brick and mortar. They understand that funding entrepreneurship education is really legacy giving. It's a giving that will, transcend generations. It's tree farming, as Gary likes to say. That's a different message. It's non-traditional, and it'll open and expose opportunities that you haven't seen that are like collaborative even within the business. Look at the Lifetime Achievement Award winner from yesterday. You don't think he's supporting his community college? I mean, holy smokes, is he, right? That potential, again, like replicating the students, you could be replicating people like him by the thousands by having this kind of an ask to engage in your community.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right. Sheena and Chris, what's your proposition for asking the difficult ask?
Well, I mean, I think that kind of finding going back to what you said earlier about like meeting where someone is. So kind of finding that, okay, what is it that we're trying to achieve, and then finding maybe examples of where this like fits into that solution. I think that's, like, for example, when I think back to starting the tour, before entrepreneurial mindset was a word, like it just wasn't a concept. The pushback that we were constantly getting is, where's the meat and potatoes? Where's the teaching of the accounting? I mean, it took years. Watching the entrepreneurship ecosystem over the past 8 years or so, it's maybe not where it needs to be now, but it's so far from where we started. But I think you kind of have to like also work with what you're starting with and translate, be that translator from one cluster here to the other cluster back home at the administration, and find that way to translate to show the value of it between there. And I think that when you look at networking, for example, it's the people who can bridge the clusters that are most successful in their careers.
I think a lot of it's going to come down to accessibility and centralizing resources. I mean, the students in the community need to know that the program's there. They need to know that it's there for them. They need to know that it's not just there for those people who are self-identifiers. It's there for anyone. That's something we're very fortunate to have in North Carolina, is that the Small Business Center network is tied to the community college system. Our Small Business Center is located in our community college library. Everything is right there. And it's that way across the state. People don't have to drive, 50 miles to get to their Small Business Center. It's open to every student. It's open to every current business owner. It's open to every prospective business owner. It's just there. So I think accessibility and centralizing those resources is huge. But I think you can't sell it as easy. You have to be very honest with these people. You can't, just like you were saying, I mean, yeah, the business plan thing is intimidating. It's a turnoff. No one wants to be like, oh, that's what I'm going to have to do. I don't know about that. But you have to be very honest, because if you're not honest with it, you're not going to end up with the product that you want as the end result. But because they're not going to know what they're getting into. They're not going to know the mindset, that entrepreneurial mindset that they need to have.
You all need to adopt him.
Yeah.
Just one thing, I know we're running out of time. One thing I wanted to add was that if you guys put your marketing hats on as far as attracting new students, I promise that if you market that we are going to teach you how to create your own financial independence and give you the ability to provide jobs and support for other people in your community, I guarantee you'll have the right people show up to your door.
Excellent. I could go on this panel another hour, and I think Nano and Heather would kill me. But I just like a big round of applause to these thought leaders. Thank you.